All right, and we're live.
Hello.
Big starts every time.
You gotta add the frills, right? It's not no frills here, it's all the frills.
That's very only Canadians would even get that. I don't even know if that's across all of Canada or just.
It's really not. It's really just like Eastern Ontario, so Toronto and East. So kind of sad. But yeah, that's where we live. Imagine that. Let's get to it. Well, we had yesterday. We were doing the first part of it 2 days ago now. At this point, I guess.
Yep.
We stopped at 15 right after Ibaka. That list kind of gets reworked a little bit with the opting out of Hayward.
Yeah, that's for sure something that needs to be discussed. Probably first, I would say, if anything.
I completely agree because as far as I'm concerned, if you're looking at free agents that are actually available, he's probably the top one right now. I'd put him ahead of Harrell.
Yeah, I mean, unless a team like OKC is trying to make a run at Brandon Ingram because they're trying to flip Oubre again. And even then, not saying they're going to get him, but yes, the best unrestricted free agent, definitely Gordon Hayward.
Oubre is, from what I understand, in talks going to the Warriors.
It really?
Yeah, so they had an $18 million trade exception from when they traded away Iggy.
Oh.
From last year, they had to use this year to pick up an extra body.
Right.
And he actually fits in. His $50 million fits into that. So it looks like Oubre is going for what? We don't know yet. Probably just going to be like a.
Oh, you mean Oubre? Yeah. That deal I think is finalized. I thought you meant Hayward at first, but yeah, I think.
No, Oubre.
Yeah, I think the deal is pretty much finalized for the first. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's going there. He'll fill in the hole of Clay, I guess.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
And when that happened, it was confusing too because the Thunder. I mean, he seemed a great fit. They're young. They need that position filled. Pretty much just fits in right there. And I mean, I guess
it's another first round pick.
Yeah, but I feel like it's like I don't know what they're stockpiling for because obviously, like at some point you have to make the move, and you do have Shea who's on the rise. I guess they're still going to wait a couple more years, see what happens with him. But I'm surprised they I'm surprised they got rid of a guy who looked like he was going to be a core guy there.
Yeah, but it is what it is. They're building for 5 years from now. They're not building for this year.
Yeah, no, definitely right there.
But I think it's a great fit on Golden State, as given the fact that Thompson's been injured.
Can you imagine that though, if he signed for minimum and he went to Golden State too?
Well, I'd say that's cheating, but didn't Cousins do that 2 years ago?
I was gonna say, even then, I mean, you can't call it cheating when he ended up with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson with the team that he had. So it's not like if it is cheating, it's not like they're against that type of cheating.
And no, it's legal.
Exactly.
He could go there, and if anything, Hayward just showed that he's not up for the money. He's not getting paid $35 million anywhere else.
That's what it is, right? It just shows how good of a guy Gordon Hayward is. I mean, it's always been talked, like whether it's him as a father, everyone always talks about it with his kids, or whether it's just even when he got injured, everyone was saying couldn't happen to a better guy. Hope he gets better. It just shows it again. Like he is not in it for the money. Who else in this right world would turn him down? Who knows what he'll get? Like you said, maybe it is a play where he maybe agreed to a longer term contract with another team with the agent, and they are going to pay him $20 million over multiple years now, and he knows he's at least locked in. But at the same time, it almost seems more likely that he's just trying to prove himself somewhere, that he is worth that money. He's going to take a lapse here, and then he'll get paid again, hopefully.
And that's likely what will happen. And also, what kind of helps his case this year was because of they're playing less games this year, so his salaries actually would have been less than $35 million to begin with.
Right.
Take out a dozen games. Next thing you know, you're looking at $30 million, and he's a big bit. You're right. He's probably looking for one more contract.
Yeah.
He is getting older though, so I can see him locking into a longer term contract if he gets onto a decent team with a decent salary. But if nobody's willing to pay him more than $15 per year, then obviously he's only going to sign 1 year.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think there's even a chance he goes back, or do you think he just knows, look, I know
I don't think he goes back.
I don't think so.
I think I remember seeing right before the playoffs started, when they were in the bubble, when it was announced that he was going to be possibly missing the first round to go see the birth of his kid.
Yeah.
And Boston fans were not all of them. Some of them were great, but there were some fans there that were lighting him up for just getting healthy and then leaving again.
Right.
And if that's me personally, I probably would have been pissed off even if one person brought that up. And I mean, the fact that multiple people brought it up and it was in the news, that he is willing to miss games to go see his son get born. His wife probably would have killed him.
It was history too at Isaiah Thomas, Danny Ainge. Like clearly that organization, whether it's the fan, like a combination of everything. As much as I love Boston franchises, clearly they're not about the athletes' well-being more so they are about winning, obviously, and that's what it primarily comes down to for them. And Hayward aside, like himself too, I think he knows, even though, like, yes, it's a great fit for anyone in Boston in a lot of ways. He knows he's not going to get the ball as much as he wants to if he does want that other contract. So I think he's more likely to go to like that kind of mid-level team that's going to make the playoffs, and he could be like the one or the two for sure.
I don't know about the one, but yeah, definitely the two. And even then, we say that, but if he goes on to a young team, someone like Chicago, maybe he might not be the leading scorer. But with that being said, he'll be the top vet on the team.
Yeah, I think with Otto Porter there, unless they trade him, that like
he's not going there.
Yeah,
I'm just saying hypothetically, if most teams in this league, he would not be the number one option on it. But that doesn't mean that he can't be the top player in regards to being a respected veteran. What if people actually getting the minutes?
What if you're a team like Portland? Can you imagine him there? Because they almost just need that one more thing, and he plays that same role in Boston, and he just goes there for less money.
Rodney Hood just went there though.
Yeah, and I mean they did just take in the they took in another Covington as well in that deal. That's what my initial.
Yeah, not Rodney Hood, Covington. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what
Hood's actually a free agent.
Yeah, that's what I mean off the bench. If you really just take Hayward, you put him in that exact same role of Boston and Portland, but he's maybe not starting, but he's still getting that 15 to 17 a game. If I'm him, I don't do it, but it's possible.
Like the only person that was able to do that successfully in the last 20 years is probably Manu. To be able to actually get paid and have that recognition as a top player and still be on the bench, it's something that's hard. As much as Lou Williams gets 20 points per game, he's not exactly considered the top player of the Clippers.
And even he's like, he
can't play defense.
He does start some games too. He's not
occasionally.
And
but what I'm trying to say is like there's not. I don't think Hayward leaves Boston to become a six man again.
Yeah.
I think wherever he's going, he wants to start. I think there's a lot of teams that would take him. Not a lot of teams can afford him. That's a big issue.
Yeah.
Unless he really wants to take less. If he wants to take less money, who knows? Utah could be an option. Fans always loved him there. I know he got shipped. He left there for a reason. Maybe he goes back, realizes that the fans there were actually better than Boston. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's hard there, though, because they are pretty well-rounded already. And, I mean, obviously, they've kind of just took Mitchell, replaced Hayward. Mitchell is obviously his own star. I mean, it can even be a team like Toronto. If they don't get Van Fleet, they don't bring Ibaka.
Yep.
It's in there for
I fit well there. He's actually another person that can move the ball and play defense and shoot a three.
Yeah.
That wouldn't say OG is going to be on the bench now. That's saying they're going to start whoever's best for that day.
Yeah.
Like they would start Norm Powell some days. They would start OG at the 2 some days if it's going to be a 2 that's going to be really good offensively.
But OG was even playing some of the 4 too, so.
And OG could play the 4, and that way you're actually small balling it, and Siakam can sometimes play the center depending on who the matchup is.
Which is exactly what happened to them against Boston too, where Tatum was playing the 4. They had Hayward at the 3, and I mean.
And they couldn't score that well, Boston with that Toronto with that lineup, but that lineup, I just like yourself, I'm sure you watch every game, but that lineup defensively shut them down every single fourth quarter, and Boston had arguably the best offensive team last year.
So where do you think the most likely place he likely signs is?
I think it depends what he wants. Depends if he wants to go to be that leading player on maybe playoff fringe team or a rebuilding team, or if he wants to, or if he's actually willing to take less money and go to a contender. If he's willing to take a little bit less money and go to a contender, then there's quite a few teams that would love to have him. Someone like Toronto would love to have him. Hell, even they can't afford him. Someone like both LAs would probably love to have another middle guy. Maybe not the Clippers because they still have George and Hayward and Leonard. But there's pretty much every contender can use his services. So if he's willing to take less money and he thinks he has a legitimate chance at a championship, then maybe he'll go to one of those top teams. if Houston runs it back, he'd fit really well there if he's willing to take minimum. But is he willing to take minimum?
Yeah, if
he could for 1 year. Cousins tried it, but Cousins actually failed with doing that.
Yeah,
so who knows?
If he is almost like visually, like I almost see him in a Miami Heat uniform. I don't know why, but I can almost just see that. Like visually, I almost see it too. If it's not that, I could see maybe a team like Dallas too, because Cuban's so good at building relationships. They always love going for that big guy. He always wants to make a splash. I mean, they do have a team with Doncic, with Porzingis. They necessarily don't. They have some good players around that 3 role, but they don't necessarily have a long-term guy. So who knows?
Oh, I would love him in Dallas. He would be great in Dallas. He'd be that third best player, and slot in perfectly with that team.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see that happening. If I had to guess, my top 3, honestly, would probably be Dallas, Toronto, and then just probably one of those mid kind of potential playoff team, like a contender, like you said, takes less. So I would honestly say probably Miami too.
And I think for someone like Toronto, it really depends if they're able to keep Van Fleet, and Ibaka for that matter. But if one of those 3 players is willing to take less money, they can actually bring all 3 in.
Yeah, I mean, they technically we know Masai isn't going to sit back and do nothing if both those guys don't come back, or even if one of them don't come back. He's not.
But another one of those situations that would only be likely if Hayward is willing to take the 1-year contract.
Yeah.
If he wanted it 3 or 4 years, a team like Toronto, who's going for a bigger fish next year, probably wouldn't take him on. But with that being said, if Hayward shows that he's a top 5 to top 10 small forward in this league, or top 5 to top 10 power forward, then why are you waiting another year to have the chance and whiff out on somebody when with how their team's built right now, adding one more all-star, even if he's not the best player in the league, can still make them content this year.
Yeah, and I mean, with the Kawhi drama, it's like, why again? Why go for it again? Why put the team?
Won.
No, but I mean in terms of him not re-signing there. Like, yeah, you just went down with it last year. Clearly, if they were going to have a chance at a big free agent, it was most likely to be the guy who just won there and was actually comfortable here than someone who's never.
He liked it there, and it's hard to attract a lot of free agents right now, given that they don't even know where they're going to play next year. And after next year, they have to have a good year coming up, because if they don't have a good year, why are any of these stars even looking at them?
Yeah.
So as much as some people are like, oh, blow it up, Toronto, you just keep OG and Van Fleet and Siakam, and it's just like, well, those are great players, but they didn't make the team.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess one more too, if he's taken less, I guess he doesn't really fit in with Milwaukee, but just because it doesn't seem like they're going to get Bogdanovich. I mean, he could. It's just he's such a good player, like you said. He fits everywhere.
He can fit anywhere.
You could shove him in anywhere, but yeah, I think the 3 more likely or the 2 more likely are like probably Dallas, Toronto, and Miami, honestly, because I do think he's going to go to a team that's at least on or is towards the upper echelon.
What about someone like if he's going to a team that's going to tank? Someone like Charlotte. Just picked up LaMelo. He's a good deep defender.
I mean, he could.
Forward, they have a bit of an opening there.
He would get paid the most there for sure.
And a team like Charlotte knows that they're coming off the contracts of Biyombo and Batum after this year. Who knows? Maybe they're willing to sign him for a couple of years and then fit him. He's a little bit older than the core, but as Boston's kind of finding out, you can't have everyone the same age. You need to have those vets to be able to bring it in and win those pivotal series.
Definitely. And I mean, it's not unrealistic to think too where he does want to go. He wants to prove his basketball worth, and doing that a lot of times is showing you're the most valuable player. And if he is that on Charlotte for the next year, maybe 2, while those guys develop, then yeah, I mean, it could make sense for him too, where again, he's like, hey, I only seemed like I lost my step because I was on a team where I was essentially a role player.
And he was hurt.
Exactly.
He got hurt. Like, he's not as fast as what he was because he didn't have as much on-court time as everyone else.
Like, Gordon Hayward on Charlotte would be an over 20-point per game guy again, 100%.
Yeah, and that would fit in well, and between him and LaMelo, they'd win a couple games.
So where do you think it's most likely then? Do you think it's that Charlotte, or do you think it's more likely the contender?
It all depends if he's willing to take less money. I think he is willing to take less money and go to a contender. where a team like you're saying Toronto, Miami would have a little bit of room and can still pay him 10 to 15 million for this year, maybe 20 million if they lose out on a couple guys. But that again, that turns down to the money. If he's willing, then yes, I can see him going into one of those top teams. But in all reality, I think he's coming off an injury. I don't think he's really going to take a 1-year contract because I know that he's coming off this injury. Nobody really knows what his long-term longevity is. He might not know. I think he's just as willing to take that 3 or 4 years with $20 million a year salary and get himself guaranteed $80 million for the rest of his basketball career, as opposed to taking 10 to 15, maybe 10 to 20 for 1 year, and then hoping that everything blows up next year. And sure, there will be teams with cap space, but if he gets injured one more time, his basketball career is over.
Yeah, if he's going for that 3 or 4 year, I would think the Charlotte, Atlanta probably most likely, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow again Dallas comes into play, because if Cuban really wants him, he'll find a way to make it work, and I think he's not scared to sign him to 3 or 4 years.
And that's Cuban missed out on a lot of people whenever Dirk was in his prime.
Exactly.
So yeah, I can see that they were willing to throw money at people like DeAndre Jordan for no reason at all. So
yeah, everyone.
Yeah, fair enough. And now he's not the third star that Brooklyn needs. He's the fourth guy though. Don't worry, guy doesn't even start anymore.
Is he even better than Jared Allen? That's a discussion for another day. But
I completely agree.
So let's technically next on the list after Hayward now.
Then, if we're going back to what we've seen, Christian Wood would be next on this.
Christian Wood is again a guy similar to Devontae Graham, who we spoke a lot about in the last one with Charlotte, who he came on really strong towards the end too. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone gives him, probably just resigns to Detroit because they are so desperate and they saw how much he could bring to them. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does get a pretty big deal too. I'm saying he likely stays in Detroit though, just because it's Detroit. What else do you have?
Yeah, and you're right in that situation. He did play pretty well the back half of last year, as much as Detroit played. He actually, looking at it right now, whenever he replaced Drummond in the starting lineup, he actually averaged 23, 10, 2, and 1.
Yeah.
So he averaged crazy points. Let's be honest, though, Blake wasn't in the lineup for most of those games. They were losing most of those games. And this is one of those prime examples of a average to above average player being the number one option. He'll get 20 points because he's an NBA player. If he's any NBA player is the number one option, getting at 20 points.
Yeah, it's like Chris Bosh in his early days, Kevin Love in his early days, where all they could do was score and rebound, but they were the best player and they got the ball. So,
and that's just it, right? So the ball's there, the shots are there. They were kind of relying on him to take these shots because they had such a young team. And you're right. That will likely involve him getting overpaid by Detroit, which could be a mistake in the long run if they do overpay him, because there is going to be other teams that are going to be going for him for sure. I can definitely see Atlanta, New York taking a run at them. New York just cleared up like $40-50 million of salary
for Westbrook.
So that can
for Westbrook.
And that's just it. But if the deal's not right, they're not going to go for it. As much as people like to chirp the Knicks, we haven't shown any ineptitude from their GM yet, or the president yet, that just took over the team last year. He hasn't made any stupid decisions yet. So I don't think he'll give away like 5 first-round picks for Westbrook. I just don't think that's happening. But I do think that he will offer some of these younger players some money. Someone's probably going to offer Christian Wood $15-20 million.
More,
and
I'd say.
Potentially more. Yeah, I don't think he really deserves more because he only showed for 3 months that he was an above-average player. He wasn't even a starter for most of the year. But I think that someone's going to offer him that money, probably Atlanta or New York, and Detroit's actually just going to match it.
Yeah, because he is a restricted free agent. That's why.
No, unrestricted.
Oh, is he?
Yep.
Okay, I thought he was still in his on his rookie contract coming off of it.
No, him and Van Fleet are both unrestricted.
Oh, because they were undrafted, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, that aside, I mean, likely, like I said, I think he stays Detroit, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if a team like New York goes for that. I think he definitely gets more than the 15, 20 mil just because of how good his back half was and how desperate some of these teams are. I honestly think Harold might sign first, or if teams per se are bringing in Harold and they know they're not getting him, I would be surprised if they're offering Christian Woods the same types of contracts.
He's a very similar player.
I think Wood in the long term has more potential even. Like I think he has more basketball IQ. I think he's going to be more similar to that Love where he's going to end up being able to play different positions a bit differently. And he'll be a good benefit, I think, long term to a team. I don't think he'll be like a long term 25 and 10 guy, but I do think he could easily drop down to a 16, 8, and 4 type of player.
Oh, like Miles Turner.
Yeah, like he's got skill everywhere. He's very usable. So if I'm Detroit, like I said, I try to bring him back for the long term and go for there, but I'm not surprised if a team does overpay him 23, 25, like New York, like Atlanta.
They're probably going to try him and Blake. I'm not sure if him and Blake will work in the same lineup as well as they're thinking it will. You're right. But I think the better move would be for them to bring him back and actually trade Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
For the long-term stability of the team. But I just don't see them doing that before they give the two of them a chance.
I agree for sure. But long term, yeah, if you have it centered around Wood and a couple other players there and you do get rid of Griffin, yeah, that's probably the better long-term plan for Detroit. But so yes, you think he's more likely to stay too?
Yeah, I think they're just gonna whatever some other team's gonna offer him, he'll go back to Detroit, and Detroit will be like, yeah, we'll do it.
I think it'll be somewhere in the 490, 400 in between that range, honestly.
Really, I don't think he'll get that much. I'd be thinking more like a 3 or 4 year. If it's 4 year, more like 80 to 75 to 80. That's all I think he deserves, really. If that's the case, if that's the offer being offered to him, he's young enough that he'd probably just take a 1 year overpay from the team and then see what he's worth next year.
Possibly. Yeah, I think like 22, 23 is where he's going to end up.
Which, again, he's not even a top 10 player in his position.
Hey, John, when these contracts started coming out, I mean, we saw the Tristan Thompson contract, and John Lure got $13 million, and John Lure is not
fair enough.
I mean, I would pay double
Christian Wood.
I would for John Lure, yeah.
Is John Lure still playing in the league? Yeah, he's still in Atlanta.
He was in. I mean, Detroit's the team. I'm pretty sure that signed him to that contract. Ironically.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he's at right now. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you though. Wood's going to resign. I think he'll take a little bit less money than you, but I still think he's going to resign there.
Yeah, and where do you think who's next on the list?
Marcus Morris.
Marcus Morris. He was playing where at the end of last year? Because he
started in New York last year, where he was shooting about 9. He had about 19.5 points per game in New York, and he shot 44% from 3.
Nice.
Yeah, right. And then he went to Clippers, and let's just say he didn't end the year at 19.5 points per game or 44% from 3. But he did show that on a weaker team that he could be a top 2 or 3 option.
Yeah, I mean, both the Morris brothers, they pretty much
they're good.
Yeah, they're good players. You know what they are at this point. If it really depends how much he wants. At this point, like if you're them and like you said, based on what they are, they're probably more towards the money and who pays them the most is where they're going to go. Because they've already been on teams like the Boston, like the Clippers. If they could easily resign there for a bit less, but like if you're them, you probably are just taking a bit more money, going to that lower end team, you're getting paid, and then at some point you're probably going to get traded again in the next year or two, and you know that. So, not you, but I mean they know that.
They know that. Let's see him sign back with the Knicks, and Knicks trade him away again.
Wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, probably. I mean, if they want to save the hassle of doing it, they just want to take less money. Probably again might just go back to the Clippers just because they do obviously want good players, have as much depth as possible, and I mean they did trade for them. So I say that's probably one of the top 3 options. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a team who just probably needs like almost a salary filler, and they just want to pay a guy like the Thunder, who, like you said, they're not trying to win right now. Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to necessarily overpay him a lot, but he'll probably just end up in that mid-level kind of. Oh yeah, they signed Marcus Morris.
Yeah, I can see that. I think he's probably going back to the Clippers just based on the fact they did trade for him last year. He didn't really have the opportunity to showcase how good he can be. As much as he did play in the playoffs with them, the bubble with them. But I think he's going to be signed with them because I think that they are not going to get much of an upgrade on better than him for the amount of money they have available.
Especially if they lose Harold too. I mean, at this point, it would be foolish not to.
They do need a center, but without Morris, who's going to play power forward? If anything, going to put up Kawhi, play power forward most of the time. It's not going to work that well because you're opening a shooting guard who's going to be quite skilled and not being guarded by George or Kawhi. Yeah. So I think that one of them always plays small forward and shooting guard, but they can in a pinch. But without having Harold, if they lose Harold, then I think that they have to bring him back. I think he's going to command that $15 to $20 million a year contract. I think the Clippers are going to give it to him, but only on a year or two, because that's all they have left with Kawhi and George.
I think that's pretty fair. Like originally, I mean, literally 2 minutes ago, I said he's probably going to go to the team who's going to pay him most, get traded, whatever. But I think the more he's talking about it, the more you realize that, yeah, I mean, they did just trade for him, probably losing Harold. They're going to have that void. They don't want to have to rehaul everything, especially based on what they are already. So I would say it's pretty fair to assume that he's going to re-sign with the Clippers. If not, probably take less money, go to the Lakers if he feels it's a more comfortable option for him. But those are probably the 1 and 2 for him, I would say.
And if that situation, he just moved to LA, probably doesn't want to move again. Like he moved to LA in the last year.
But the Clippers can sign him to more money, so it's probably more likely.
Yeah, because they can probably go over the cap. They already have him on their team.
Exactly.
So that's probably where he ends up. Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's a small chance where he goes to a lower team just to try to prove his worth again and get another big contract. But I think he wants to also win a championship. He hasn't won one yet. And those teams give him best chance.
Yeah, if I'm him and I'm getting either 15 from the Clippers to return or 20 from the Knicks to go there, I'm taking 15 from the Knicks.
I completely agree. As much as he got paid hard last year from the Knicks, he got paid good. But that got him. He's on a good team now. And I think he's part of that atmosphere. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I would even take 10 to 12 to stay on the Clippers if I'm him, honestly.
And if that's something that that would only be for a year or two.
Exactly.
Kawhi and George are actually only there. I'm not sure about George. Kawhi is definitely only there for one more year. So they want to keep Kawhi, but they got to show Kawhi that they're willing to spend the money.
Definitely.
And let's be honest, Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft, he's got the money. He's not worried about the money. As long as the league lets him pay whatever he wants, he'll pay it.
Yeah, and he forms great relationships with players too. So I think, another discussion again, but yeah, I think Kawhi will be fine.
Yeah, that's so yeah. I think Morris goes there, resigns. Pretty safe bet, I think. Next we got here. Ooh, I don't know why he's so high. I know why, but most people don't. But Marc Gasol.
So I mean,
if he does he go to Europe?
Potentially. COVID makes it different too, right? Like it depends where he's living right now. There might be family. Yeah, exactly. There's probably people who are higher up in the sports media world who know where he is. They have a better idea of this. But yeah, like if he's already in Europe and they don't want to make any big changes, I wouldn't be surprised. Not saying he retires from the NBA, but if he even takes a year off and he does play in Europe and he almost lets his body rest a bit, he knows he's going to be one of the best guys. He can take a rest night any day he wants there. He stays at home with the family. So if he's already there, I say he probably stays in Europe. If they are living already in North America somewhere, maybe Toronto again, just because he is more comfortable here. They probably don't bring back him and Ibaka, but they probably bring back one of them. So if Ibaka doesn't come back, Gasol probably does. Otherwise, I mean, if you're Gasol, you're probably just looking for a title again at this point. You probably just go to the Lakers. Maybe you return back home to Memphis if you really don't want that much money. You just want to help the team out again. But overall, I'd say probably a team like LA is going to be the best bet for him.
Yeah, I can see that. There's going to be a hole there at center. They're likely not re-signing Dwight. He probably just earned himself a little more money than LA can afford.
Yeah.
Unless he wants to win again. Also, side note, Dwight just did an interview recently about people think he's gay. Guy's got like 6 kids.
That's been the thing for years. It's been like 3 or 4 years. There's something about someone. There was like DM.
Like,
yeah, there's a big Dwight Howard scandal about that. But
he's got like 5 kids. And one of his kids just announced that he's not even a good daddy. So, but let me go back to this. Go back to Marc Gasol here. I can definitely see him in LA. I actually think there's a chance that him and Ibaka come back to Toronto. I think that he'd be a selling point to Ibaka to come back, just because of the fact that as much as Marc was starting, that gave kind of Ibaka that opportunity to be able to feast on these second stringers. He still played his 30 minutes per game. He's played quite a bit more than Marc, to be honest. But he knows that no young punk is gonna come up and take his minutes from him. If Gasol's there, they have a great relationship together. That being said, if that happens, combined, they have to come under $30 million. Big money hit.
That's the thing. I wouldn't pay Marc Gasol $15 million at this point, even with his IQ. It's hard.
I'd pay him 10. I'd pay him 10 to 15. He's got a great IQ. He's a great defensive player. He's unplayable against certain lineups, which is why he's not worth more money than that. His scoring numbers were absolutely garbage last year.
And he does take a lot of threes, I feel like, still, that he shouldn't.
But he stretches the floor out, and by him standing at the three-point line and taking the occasional three, he's able to bring his center out with them. And there's so many openings for people like Powell and Manfleet to get off the roll and get cut in. So I think that he's a perfect center for their system, just with his high IQ, his passing ability. His defense was outstanding. He actually, plus minus, I think he's like +8 last year overall, which is absolutely ridiculous considering he can't even run up and down the court. What a difference between Marc Gasol and switching out to a different sport. Not sure if you heard about Joe Thornton signing with the Leafs recently.
Yeah.
And he's over in Finland right now playing pro hockey in Finland to get more reps as opposed to try to rest his body. What a difference in mentalities.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like they're different sports too. Like,
for sure.
The seasons, the way they're structured, are clearly going to be different as well. Everyone knows for whatever. Like, the NBA offseason is just crazy, crazy short for whatever reason. And the Raptors have made it a lot farther multiple times than Joe Thornton has in recent years. So Gasol has been playing 20 to 30 games, I would say.
Well, before last year, he played the World Cup right after. Played and won the World Cup like a month after he won the championship with the Raptors.
Not to take anything away from Joe Thornton and anything he's saying that Gasol has played more games, but I do think it takes a toll when you're going to the finals basically every year, and then you have to go right back into it.
And they played a lot last year. As much as he came back, he looked healthy coming into the bubble. He didn't have enough time with his new body, his new health, to be able to adjust, to be able to play a little bit better. I think you give him a proper offseason. Well, there's not going to be a proper offseason, but you give him a proper amount of time with the current shape he's in, and I think he'll regain his scoring touch, and he'll regain a lot of things that he was missing. But I love him. I would love for him to go back to Toronto because I do think he's a great player. I don't know if he does go back to Toronto. I can see him going to LA, just like you said. I would wish for him not to, but that's where he'll probably end up, whether it be the Clippers or the Lakers. And another team I would even throw in there, just based on the fact that they do need that veteran presence. And they don't really have a big hole at center. I can throw in someone like Boston in there. That'd be someone that, he knows that they're in that winning championship mentality. As much as there's other teams that would be a great fit for him, I think New Orleans would be an amazing fit for him, along with Zion. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. Such a fast team, and then him going there, it's kind of like the Raptors of 2019. With that being said, I don't think he lowers himself to go play with one of those teams. If he's going to go play with a lower end team, I think he'd just rather go back to Europe for a year and see where his body is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say it's probably, to me, one tie between returning to the Raptors or Lakers for much less money than last year. I would say number 2 is probably Boston, and then number 3 is returning to Europe.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that past him. There's always that small chance of going back to Memphis. considering they are a winning team. But I don't think they're winning a championship next year. And I think if Marc Gasol in the NBA, he wants to win the championship next year.
Yeah, and I think, with JD, why even? JD doesn't play a full game to begin with, so.
Hey, neither did Gasol.
Perfect. That's what I mean. But that's the thing,
But they're not different. They're not different of players. Whereas the reason why Gasol and Ibaka work so well is because they're actually different players.
Exactly.
And don't put them in the same lineup together, because that just sounds fucking idiotic. So that's why I'm in the same boat as you. Lakers, Toronto, maybe someone like Boston. I personally think he's staying in the NBA. I don't think he's going back to Europe. But we don't know. We don't know his family life. We don't know what he's been doing for the last 3 months. If he's happy being at home in Europe, maybe he doesn't even play this year at all. Maybe he just goes and plays some pickup ball with his brother. I hear his brother's a little good at basketball, so I think that would be a good option for him.
I guess before we move on too, maybe he spoke to Pop, maybe go San Antonio. Hey, great city, great coach. You get some rest there. Pop's will rest you any day you're not feeling good. You get a good system.
You never know. With his brother being out, that's why I wouldn't bet against him going to the Lakers.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they know what the Gasols can do, and as much as he's not Powell in his prime, hell, he's not Mark in his prime. He fits that system so well, the amount of vets they have.
Yeah. But
I don't want him to go there, because seeing him going there means if we make the finals, then we're playing Marc Gasol in the finals, and I just don't want to do that.
So who do we got next?
Aaron Baines,
based on what Phoenix has done, he probably just goes back because he knows his role with the team. He knows that they're on the rise. He, as a player, is pretty much on the rise, or he's about where he should be. And again, they know his value too. So I think he still gets his minutes there. Probably goes back on just an average contract. I don't think they overpay him. I don't think they underpay him. I just think he goes back for like 14, 15 million.
But I totally get where you're coming from there in that sense. On Phoenix, he's not starting anymore. He's not starting at all. I think he's too good of a player to come off the bench. I think he can start on probably about 10 to 15 teams in this league and be a pretty decent starting presence. I don't think he's a top 10 center, but I think he's worth enough to start. I actually think that he's better than Ayton at this point in his career, but because Phoenix gave so much for Ayton, or like he's their top pick, the number 2 last year, or 2 years ago. So I don't think that he'll ever start in Phoenix. I think that someone like Boston is another great fit for him. He used to play there. I think he really fit in that really well, just because he's a good 3-point shooter and he's fairly decent on defense. So I think that he can actually go to Boston. Would be like the top team that could bring him in. But I think he'd probably go to a lower ranked team where he can actually be the starter and be a good part of the system. Whereas in Phoenix, as much as they are up and coming, if he restarts, he knows he's not starting. He knows he's coming off the bench for the rest of his career.
I don't think, even if he comes off the bench, though, I think he's getting good minutes, and I think he's serving his role good there. He's a really good, tough defensive body. And at the end of the day, Phoenix needs that too. If they're going to go against teams like Denver, like Lakers, who they do have that big center, and even Golden State with Wiseman now, they need a body in the middle who's really going to bruise them off, who's going to make it a rough game for them some days. So I think you're able, if you're Phoenix management, you're able to convince him to come back. You're able to convince him to kind of build that culture with it. So I'm kind of actually staying firm that he's still going to stay.
Staying back. I could definitely see that. I'm more leaning towards someone like New Orleans, who can use a center. They're probably not bringing back Favors. Favors is one of the best defensive centers, but he can't shoot a 3. They need someone that can shoot a 3 and just play average defense, because Zion's going to be down there as well.
I can see that too. New Orleans.
I think someone like New Orleans is where he's going to end up going.
I like he's more than Boston, just because I don't think he goes back.
Yeah, and he's not going to get any money in Boston. He'll get minimum contract, whereas someone like New Orleans could actually pay him 15 to 20, even a bit of an overpay. They know that their other players are young and that he can actually be a bit of an anchor at the center position, and it gives Zion that time to build his strength. I know he's a bit of a monster right now, but eventually he'll probably be playing center in this league. probably a year or two. That gives him that kind of that safety net for the time being, and he shoots the three ball fits their team really well. So that's my bet that he goes to New Orleans, but I definitely can see him going back to Phoenix as well.
No, I would say New Orleans is a good too. I mean, like you said, he's a good replacement over Favors, both offensively, and he's not that much like he's pretty up there defensively too. So I would say he's a downgrade on that side. So that's a good number 2, I would say.
After this, we got another center. I'm probably going to say very similar things about this one. You're probably going to say some harsh words. Tristan Thompson, good old Canadian boy. We've talked about him a couple times now. He's coming in. Where does he go?
Well, hey, we can't be too harsh on him because we need guests on the podcast. I think he's somewhat local, so we need to recruit him, and then we could ask him hard questions.
I think he's a great player, to be honest, but
he serves his role on the team. The only reason he ever gets criticism is because he got paid like the star player of the Cavaliers, and he's not.
Rich Paul. I'll take him my agent any day.
Exactly. So I mean, it's not like he wasn't the 2 guy. He was hardly the 3. He was hardly the 4. So it's hard to justify his contract. But as a player, yeah, he's good. He's a 12 and 10 guy.
He was the number 5 on that team, right?
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, based on how he was paid as if he should have been a 1 to 3, maybe 4th fiddle, and he was obviously the 5th fiddle. And that's the only reason he gets criticism. He gets paid. Guys like Ed Davis, who he's better than guys in that echelon. He's probably like a 10 to 15 power forward center kind of thing. So Cleveland, obviously they like it. They like him there. It's easy to say he goes back there. If another team is going to go for him, maybe again, if Toronto doesn't get Ibaka, they go for him. He is a Canadian kid, so it wouldn't be a huge surprise to see him come here. If he just wants to get overpaid again, then maybe he goes to a team like Atlanta, I would say is probably most likely, just to keep bolstering in power forward position. Yeah, but it's Capella, Dedmon, and that's about it, I believe, for them, kind of in the big range. I mean, they did just draft that center too, so I guess maybe not.
It's hard. There's a lot of centers in this league, and he's not. Thompson's an amazing role player, but he's not that top center, the top 5 center that's going to push you into the finals. Exactly. But he's that guy who's, if he's on your team and you're in those finals, he'll play his fucking ass off for you, and he'll hustle harder than anyone.
And I mean, he does have a lot of drama with him too. He's had that Kardashian chick. He likes the limelight. Maybe he goes to Los Angeles too. Maybe he likes playing with LeBron. Takes a huge pay cut. He already got overpaid. He could just go back there too. I mean,
I think he'd be a great fit there.
He would be. I mean, they obviously need those tough guys. Like you said, they're losing Dwight. He kind of replaces him good there. So I would say at least in the top 5 probably options is the Lakers. I would say it's probably like Cleveland, the Lakers, and then the other 3 are probably just I said Toronto. That's probably in there too. And then I would say the other 2 are just teams random that are going to overpay him and offer contracts. Don't know if
someone again. I'm gonna bring him up with the last guy, but New Orleans, another guy, another team that can use a hard-nosed player. Yeah, that shows on how to play.
For sure.
Yeah, like there's a lot of options out there. I think he's one of those guys. I don't think he gets signed right away. I think he gets signed a couple of days after, once a couple of the higher end centers get off the market, and then next thing you know, there's still a market for him. Exactly. Guy can be starting on a top contending team that's got 2 or 3 top of the line players. He's an amazing role player to have. He does his job. He knows his job. He got paid. Good job on him. Let's be honest though, everyone got paid that year. Yeah. Biombo got $20 million, and Thompson's. I like Biombo because he played really good in Toronto. That finger wag was awesome. But both of them didn't really deserve their $20+ million, but they got it, and amazing on them. Fantastic. I don't think Thompson gets that again. But I think he's going to go to likely a team that's going to pay him $10 to $15 million. Who knows? He may even come back to Cleveland just because they like him so much there. Yeah. I can also see again someone like New Orleans can be bringing him in. Teams of that sense that could offer him a decent contract and give him a starting role. I don't know if he really goes to a team where he's not going to be a starter. I don't think he goes to New York. I don't think he'd be the starter there because Capella will be starting there. I think he goes somewhere where either he's starter or he's really wanted. In Cleveland, he might not be starting, but he's very, very wanted. So I can definitely see him going back. or it would be another one of those teams we've talked about that has a hole at center that wants to fill it. Someone like New Orleans, depending on who they skip out on. As much as maybe not, but someone like even Dallas, because they can use a center. KP doesn't really like playing center. Again, Mark Cuban can make whatever he wants work. One of those kind of teams where if they miss out on somebody, Detroit, if they lose Christian Wood, he could fit there as well. Just any one of those teams that's really going after the center position. He might not be the first one to go, but I would take him on my team if he's willing to lower his pay scale.
I would say even before moving on, if Houston does part way with Westbrook, even Houston, just because they do have a huge center void. So I mean that could definitely
and I think that Daryl Morey and D'Antoni are gone since the small ball experiment didn't really work out. They need to bring in a center anyways.
Yeah.
Hell, if he's willing to take minimum, that's a good spot for him in general. Yeah. I think he would fit on that team very well. And if he doesn't shoot the 3 ball, which is what that's why they want small ball. But maybe they decided that someone like Capella, which is essentially Thompson, to fit down there and get those rebounds might not be a bad thing.
There you go, figured it out. Let's go to Houston.
There you go. There's have to be some openings for that to happen, but I can definitely see that happen.
Definitely.
Next we got another center. Another similar situation. Where the hell did he go? We haven't brought his name up once, even though he's had better stats than everyone else in this list so far. Hassan Whiteside.
Yeah, I mean, Whiteside, the year he was a free agent, he was one of the best, obviously, out there. And this year, he's, what is the rank, 19th, 20th?
21st.
21st, yeah. So, 21st overall. It doesn't seem like he's going to get paid the way he ever wanted to. Portland, just go ahead and bring him back. But like you said, they're so much more better or efficient with Nurkic. Why would you? Unless he's really going to be on an efficient contract for you. But yeah, no, if I'm him.
Where does he go, though? Someone's going to pay him.
Probably. It's easy. Like, I would like to see a team like Orlando get someone a bit different than Vucevic to actually sit down there and to actually be a good center. But I guess they tried the Mo Bamba experiment with Vucevic. Didn't necessarily work. So it really just depends. He probably is the center who will get the most money, I would say, out of the options we just spoke about. Where he goes, probably, like if Charlotte wants a center, maybe he goes there because he does want to be that kind of star piece. I don't think he's going to take minimum. I think he's going to be one of those guys who goes to those weaker teams, one of the teams who have the maximum salary cap, whether it be the New York, the Atlanta, the team that I just mentioned that I can't even remember for some reason. But he definitely goes to Charlotte. He definitely goes to one of those lower echelon teams.
Yeah, I think Charlotte's a great option for him. I think they have a decent amount of money to be able to pay him, and they know they have Biyombo coming off the contract next year. Him and Biyombo are very similar players where they're hard-nosed. They can't really shoot a three-pointer, but they get those rebounds. Whiteside is one of the more explosive players in this league. He jumps up a little bit too much when it comes to blocks, but he does lead in blocks a couple times now, right? So it's not like it doesn't work. He is a great player. He put up like 15, 12 last year. It's actually ridiculous, considering he's not even their best center on the team. Luckily, Nurkic was hurt. Also, I just realized that earlier I mentioned that Capella was the center for New York. He definitely is not. He's on Atlanta. That was actually
funny. Like 3 minutes ago, you said Atlanta. When I said Tristan Thompson there, you said Capella. So.
Perfect. There you go. So I know what I'm talking about. Perfect. But yeah, no, I can definitely see him. I think Charlotte's a good fit for him. I can see him going there. I do think that maybe someone like Detroit, if they miss out on everyone, if they lose Christian Wood, maybe he goes there. Not 100% on that one just because of they gave away Drummond for nothing, and he's essentially the same thing as Drummond. But if he gets paid a lot less than Drummond, then maybe that's a fit. Because one of the reasons I didn't fit in Detroit was that they paid him $30 million. They couldn't bring in anyone else around them.
Well, who's Sacramento center? Because I know they have Badgley, but he's more of a power forward. Who's Sacramento?
Sacramento?
Yeah. Like you said, the Pelicans, you mentioned them everyone for center. If they lose Favors, don't bring in Baines, don't bring in anyone. Same thing, Whiteside can maybe go there, but I would say probably Charlotte is my most likely guess. He's not going back to Portland, seems to be the consensus for us.
Yeah, I don't think he's going back to Portland. I don't think they're going keep him. I think they're more likely to keep someone like Carmelo, who can play a very, very, very small ball center, but mostly play power forward. And then they are to keep someone like
Swan, maybe to keep Swan again, bring him in power forward.
And they still have they still have the power forward there, Collins.
Yeah,
Collins. So I think that he can actually play small ball center as well. And Nurkic technically should be playing 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Talking about Sacramento, I'm not even sure who their starting center is. I'm looking at their lineup right now. Alex Len, Richon Holmes, Jabari Parker.
Yeah, I think they're ish big on Holmes, but maybe even he goes to Sacramento. But I would say more likely, I would say probably one is probably that Charlotte. Two, even like I said, Pelicans if they don't get anything, and then three, I would even give it to them.
Sacramento.
Yeah.
And one, they do have Bagley there, who's young, but he's more power forward than he is a center. I put Jabari Parker in the same category. Can't believe Jabari Parker is only 25 years old. He's my age. I feel like he's been in the NBA forever now. But that team's pretty weak. I can see him going there just because they can use that big presence down low. They have a lot of wing players. They don't have a lot of center court.
They have money.
So yeah, they have a bit of money available. A lot of people coming off contracts this year.
Still a California team, as much as everyone forgets. So
yeah, they're not top tier California team, but they are based in California. It does seem like Whiteside likes that the limelight. So I think he would fit in well there. Them, or I think Charlotte would bring him in, just because I feel like they can have that void. LaMelo's gonna shoot like 30 shots, 15 shots a game. You might as well have someone down low to get the rebounds.
Definitely. All right, I got 15 minutes to finish this up, so it's
okay. Let's keep going. Okay, Paul Millsap. I think he just goes back to Denver.
Depends on the money, right? Like if it's like because they paid him so much last time, he's obviously not going to command that money. If he likes Denver, they like him, which obviously they do. Bring him back, like you said, especially if Grant's leaving too. You have a bit of wiggle room. You can still pay him something. Yeah, I agree. He's probably most likely. Because I don't think he's a guy who necessarily wants to go play with LeBron or anywhere where he knows he's going to win. He likes what's developed in Denver. I think he liked playing in Atlanta too, where they were in that 5-4 role. So I agree. Probably just goes back to Denver.
Yeah, I can definitely see him back in Denver. The only other option I would throw out there would just be because they just got rid of his buddy, but I can see him in Philly. Philly just cleared up a bunch of cap space. They don't have a lot of room, but they can probably fit him in there for 10.
Yeah, Philly would be a very
million.
Similar to
then he'd probably be starting there, to be honest. Whereas on most other teams, he's probably not starting anymore.
I would say if Denver brings back Grant, he's more like Philly's a very good option. If Denver doesn't bring back Grant, Millsap probably back. Yeah,
I can see that. Next on this list, we got Jay Crowder. I think you just go back to Miami personally. What do you think?
If they do end up getting that Gordon Hayward somehow, like for whatever reason, again, I'm visualizing, I don't think he goes back because they just have their room. Crowder is a guy who's moved around a lot in the NBA, obviously has some value, but he's very replaceable at the same time. So I don't think he's a commodity for Miami per se. Not that he's not a commodity, but he's not a necessity for them to bring back, even though he does fit the system good. So I say if I'm Miami, I'm trying to get Gordon Hayward. If I don't, I bring back Jay Crowder.
That's fair enough. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to bring in Hayward, but if they do, and then they're two similar players, they're probably not going to keep them. I think Crowder actually surprised everyone last year. It turns out he's still a fairly good basketball player.
Yeah.
People kind of forgot about him ever since he went to Cleveland that 1 year and kind of shit the bed. But he's still a very good player. I think he just goes back to Miami. A couple other teams can use that at mid presence, but if Miami's not an option, then I'd be looking at teams like even someone like the Lakers, but all those contending teams because he wants to be on the contending team. But that being said, he's not going to get paid on those teams.
No, and I mean, if I'm him, Raptors, they loved DeMar Carroll before, even though they overpaid him. Very similar player to DeMar Carroll. Wouldn't be surprised if Raptors don't get any big names if they try to bring in Jay Crowder either.
Yeah, I can see that. He'd come off the bench. That's where he belongs to most teams. He plays that Iguodala role on the contending team. He'd be that great role player, hit those threes and play defense.
Yeah.
Next, we would have Rajon Rondo, who just played himself into a contract. He's not going back to the Lakers.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Originally, you would think that's the easy assumption is you want to run it back, but Rondo has his ego, obviously, still to this day.
He knows he's good.
He's good, but he's like at the same time, he's not consistent. Yeah, he had a couple great games in the playoffs and playoff Rondo, but the day after, he'd have an awful game. I mean,
but people forget about it because he played on the Lakers.
Exactly. So I mean, I don't think Rajon Rondo is going to get. It's the same thing as a couple years ago where he bought in on himself and he didn't get paid. I think he just waited and waited. He ended up in Dallas for essentially nothing. And I think it's going to be a very similar thing where he's not going to get that much money and he's going to end up having to go to a team where he might get like, how much did he get paid last year with the Lakers?
Oh, he got minimum $7 million.
Yeah,
veteran minimum. He's been in the league so long.
Get like slightly more like a 10 million, but I don't think he's going to get like a 12 or 15. And if he's that concerned over $3 million, I mean, that's another
point
side. So
he's already made his money. He makes more on sponsorships than he does anything else.
Exactly.
I can actually see someone like Dallas bringing him back. I know he didn't really work there before, but their roster, their personnel was not the same as they had before.
They just lost.
Carlisle's still there, but he'd fit well with Doncic by being that a guy who can play the defense, still move the ball around. He proved last year he can actually shoot a three-pointer. I didn't know he can do that. I thought I can shoot it better than him. Turns out I can't.
Don't you're good.
Oh, perfect. They haven't seen me yet, right? But I can see someone like them bringing him in. Another team that can use most teams he'd probably be off the bench. If Charlotte has cap space, maybe they bring him in to kind of teach LaMelo a little bit because he's more of a mentor at this point in time. But he's probably, if he wants money, I can see that happening. He's probably just going to go to a contender again, though. He wants to win. He just proved last year that he is a great player still. What was that quote of him at the beginning of last year? He put me and LeBron in the finals, and we can't lose 4 games to anyone. It turns out it was true.
Yeah.
But I can see him going to one of those contenders to sign for low, if not minimum. Again, just to show that he's that player. But if he does that, then why is he not just staying in LA, right?
Yeah.
In that situation, probably stay in LA. But there is a few teams I can see that are on the up and coming. Miami, if they miss out on Dragic, if he doesn't come back, I can see him going there.
Yeah.
He had a relationship with Butler. He's played with Butler before. If not, I think someone like Dallas. If one of those up and coming teams that have a whole point guard doesn't bring him in, I can just see him going back to LA for minimum.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't know why he wouldn't just go back originally. He's going to do that. I think he is taking chance. If Miami does get Dragic, I think that's good because you can bring him in while still developing the other guys. You can almost just split minutes where Rondo could do 10, where Dragic was 20, but you have someone else who's replacing that kind of thing. And then also, like you said, Dallas, yeah, they did just lose Seth Curry. They do have a guard opening. So that's possible too. I maybe even like Boston if they don't bring back Wanamaker, maybe he just goes there. It's hard to say with him though. Like I'm just confused why he didn't take that Lakers contract. I really am.
Like he had a player option, he turned it down.
Yeah.
Maybe he's looking for a 3 or 4 year contract.
Maybe.
But it's hard to say. But yeah, I think he either goes up and comer or he just returns back in LA. But he'll kind of make himself look like an idiot if he does that.
Yeah.
Garrett Favors. I think he should just go back to New Orleans.
Yeah, if they're offering him a contract, I would, because we all agree, like all we basically said was if there's an upgrade available from Favors, take it. But necessarily, there very well likely won't be. So I would say Favors is a very good player. It's very reliable. He fits. The other guys are going to pick up the scoring, which has always been the lack of Derek Favors. So I would agree you probably bring it back. Just pay him a bit less than this.
Yeah, and like on New Orleans, he can actually get a decent contract. Another team I can see him going to would be someone like the Lakers, because he plays that McGee, Dwight Howard role very well. He's a better player than both of them at this point in his career, and they know they don't need a center to shoot the 3 because in the small ball lineups, and that's where Davis plays anyways. I can see him going there if he's willing to sign for a minimum and try to go after a championship. That'd be one of those I want to play with LeBron kind of situations. Other than probably the Lakers, I can see maybe Toronto if they miss out on Ibaka and Gasol to bring him back, because his numbers would be probably improved on compared to Gasol and just a little bit shittier when it comes to shooting than Ibaka, but a similar defensive player. They can fit good on that team, but I don't think he's even in their top 3 options right now. Whereas on someone like LA, he would literally go there and start from day one. And I think that's, if LA strikes out on someone like Ibaka, I think someone like Favors would be a great fit for them. But overall, I think he just stays in New Orleans, plays it safe, gets his probably decent contract, gets paid $10, $15, $20 million again for the next 2 or 3 years until Zion picks up his bigger contract. And I think he fits well in that system. I think they didn't have enough chance last year to show with him and Zion next to each other because Zion was hurt most of the year. I think if New Orleans just runs it back, pretty much the same roster, but with subbed in Bledsoe and Hill instead of Holiday, I think they're a playoff team right away. So I think he just goes back there.
Yeah, I'd say likely. If not, if Houston makes room, it goes to Houston. If Denver doesn't bring back Millsap or Grant, I could see that. But otherwise, yeah.
Next, we got DeMarcus Cousins. He hasn't played in 2 years. When he did play, he barely played when it came to Golden State. He didn't play at all last year.
Yeah, honestly, if I'm him, I think the most likely move is he stays in Los Angeles, but he goes to the other team. I think he goes to the Clippers.
I think it depends. I think he might actually stay with the Lakers. I think he has a great relationship with Davis, and he wasn't given the chance because he got hurt. That being said, he's been betting on himself for 2 years now on minimum contracts. Eventually, he's going to have to suck it up and get a 3 or 4 year, $50 million a year contract instead of that 4 year, $40 million a year contract that he wants. I think eventually he does suck it up and go to one of those teams. I don't know if this is that year. I think he likely just stays in the Lakers because he wasn't actually given that chance to play last year. And he knows that if he goes and gets a 15 and 10 year, 20 and 10 year, then he'll actually do amazing when it comes to a contract the year after. So I think he just stays in LA. I think it's a great fit for him. Because other teams are he just wouldn't bring enough value to the other teams to afford the big contract that he wants. And no one else is as much of a contender as LA. Why would he leave for a minimum to go to another team where he's still not going to be starting or he's not going to be that star player?
For me, I'd say it's 1 Clippers, 2 Lakers, 3 Rockets if they can make that work.
If they can make the room. He's another guy who I can see Toronto picking up if they don't get Ibaka. I keep saying that just because they have a hole, but someone has to fill that hole, right?
Yeah, I just don't think he wants to come here. That's why I think he stays in one of those. It's either Los Angeles or Houston.
If it's a 1 year contract, they're not going to play in Toronto, so it doesn't matter. Next on the list, we already know what's going to happen here. Tim Hardaway Jr., player option. He's just going to stay. Player option is $25 million.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like a goddamn idiot to leave.
I
actually think they trade him. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. I don't know if he plays the full year in Dallas. I think he'll play up to the trade deadline, though.
Yeah, here's which number is this?
27.
And who's 8, 9, and 30?
Jordan Clarkson, Malik Beasley, Dwight Howard, and they tossed in Carmelo Anthony at the bottom there at the next year.
Okay, do you have any quick thoughts on Howard or Anthony? And then we'll come back to
Yeah, for sure. So Anthony, I think he stays in Portland. I think they gave him a great chance last year. If he doesn't stay in Portland, I can actually see him going to like the Knicks again. Sounds weird, but he'd go there and get his 15 points per game. Still could be considered that great face. But I think he's past that at this point. I think he just stays in Portland.
I think he stays. I think he's grateful of the chance they gave him. So I agree.
Exactly. The only other chance I can see would be if LA brings him in, just because of the relationship with LeBron. But we've been talking about that for years.
Exactly.
And they didn't do it last year. I think Carmelo took that as an insult, and he's not going back.
Yeah, I agree.
Dwight Howard, I don't know about you. I don't think he goes back to LA. But I do think that he goes to a contender, likely someone I can see Boston bringing him in just because they have that hole. If New Orleans doesn't bring in Favors, I can see him fitting in well there. Could he match well with Zion? What do you think?
I mean, if he doesn't go to contender, I think maybe Orlando just to kind of have the homecoming. They do have some room. I think the bomb experience kind of failed. They obviously need someone a bit stronger than Vucevic. So I could see maybe going there. Boston, not a bad option. Obviously not going to Houston, not going to Denver, probably not going to Dallas, maybe, but unlikely. So I would say he's probably going back to the East is all I would keep it at.
Yeah, I'd say that's likely as well. So I think he'll do great next year. I like Howard as a player. He's a future Hall of Famer as much as people chirp on him. I think he'll still have another great year next year and show people that he's pretty solid. I do think he signs for 2 or 3 years though, just based on probably his last year to get a contract.
Yeah. All right, we got 1 quick minute here. So Hardaway, I agree, is probably going to get traded. Any potential options for him? I'd say maybe a team like Atlanta, who they don't have to pay him super long term, and he kind of replaces Kent Bazemore. They liked him back then, so I
would have loved Hayward. I think that would have been a great fit. That's obviously not happening, right? But it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think that if they do trade him, it will be for a 3rd star, and I think it just depends on who's available.
I think if Hayward's going there, they trade him for not too much. They just make that contract room. They bring in Hayward.
I can see that. They're trying to open up room anyways. So
you see, like,
that's something I can definitely see.
Yeah, and you need a team with cap room. So I'd say most likely Atlanta, Sacramento is probably the top 2 options, honestly.
Fair enough. Well, I think you got to go. We got to get our real life has to get back to normal here.
Let's do this.
On to the next one.
On to the next one. All right, I will see you later.